Welcome back, everyone, to another one-on-one with Jerry Hall. Today's conversation is with Tangem CEO Sergio Mello. What an incredible guy. Now, I'll tell you, I'll leave a timestamp in the description of the video below because this thing opens up very technically. So much so that it went right over my head. And I had to ask Sergio, dumb it down. Dumb it down for the old guy who's just learning about this stuff. Well, that commenced and an incredible conversation ensued. I hope that you enjoy it. What Tangem's got going on is actually very revolutionary, and I believe is poised for incredible adoption. They're a part of the Pay ID coalition and working closely with a lot of blockchain projects. They are not one of these companies issuing a token that's sitting on exchanges hoping that you'll buy the token. No. This is an actual technical chip company. The applications for chip, as it pertains to the Internet of Things, as it pertains to supply chain management, are vast. And there is a big future ahead for Sergio and his team. I hope you enjoy that conversation because it's coming up right now. Sergio, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. How are things where you are sequestered in the world?
Hi, Jerry. How are you? That's fine. We're surviving. California has been dealing with it pretty well so far, so we're getting through.
Right on. I spent most of my life in California, up in the North Bay, just above San Francisco, and I'm currently here for the last 2 years in Costa Rica. So. You know, I
from bay to bay
tabs on what's going on with you folks. I'm excited to talk to you today, specifically about Tangem, and really expand not only my audience base, but hopefully the greater crypto world's understanding of what Tangem is. You know, like I told you in the pre-call, my first, exposure to Tangem was in the fact that you had a chip embedded in a plastic card, and it could be used as a gift card. It could be a wallet for you in your actual wallet. And it seems that you have now transitioned from using that card as a proof of concept for the chip. And now the chip is making its way into these other industrial verticals. And that's what I'm really excited to get into with you today. So I'll let you take it forward. Fire away.
Okay, so there's a lot to talk about. Please interrupt me because I'd really like to be more of an interaction rather than a monologue.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Tangem, of course, comes from a very deep background in secure applications, secure chips, embedded chips, smart cards, and all the realm that surrounds cryptography. So our first application was this card, which you probably remember, with a fixed denomination Bitcoin note. And it's really the best example of how crypto should have moved beyond pure digital into people's hands. And today we're still pursuing that track. So we do sell online all these beautiful cards. There's a few here. There's a Ripple. There's an Ethereum. There's also a Cardano card, and they all have the same technology. They all take the best out of a secure element chip, which you can see here. So these chips are so let me continue. So these chips are secure elements. They are very precious in the fact that they are very well protected against all sort of side channel attacks and penetration attacks. That they're really safe storage, but it's difficult to use them as processors. And so what we've worked on is to make them compute all the cryptographic algorithms that you need in order to produce keys and generate keys with the right type of entropy with FIPS 140-2 standards. And manage those keys and hold them and sign transactions with SecP 25681, with ED 25519, also RSA, all sort of signature schemes that are necessary for the modern world of cryptography, and fundamentally also for blockchains and cryptocurrencies.
Well, let me ask you a quick question, and I hate to interrupt, but the truth is, the last 60 seconds went right over my head. I'm not a tech guy, and
Hmm.
so in like simpleton terms, what
Yeah,
you're saying, what I think I'm hearing you say. Oh, well, why don't you tell me? I don't want to presume.
I can break
What
it
does
down.
it mean in
Yeah, of course.
simpleton terms?
I can break it down. So the essence of holding digital assets is, especially with asymmetric key cryptography, is holding this private key very securely and using it when necessary. So asymmetric cryptography is this beautiful thing that was invented a few decades ago and allows for two parties to have a secret conversation, um, with the certainty that the sender is really the sender of the message, and with the certainty that that the encryption is secure, and anyone that intercepts the message, the ciphered message, has no information whatsoever on how to decipher it. So uh, this key pair cryptography is one of the fundamental components of how blockchains work today, because they are all based on a private key being the proof of ownership of a blockchain asset, and which could be a cryptocurrency, a credential, or a non-fungible token, whatever, anything. So holding this private key, which is just a long string of characters, is theoretically easy. I mean, it's just a string of characters, right? But keeping it safe is not easy, because the way we have to store strings of characters today as consumers, and especially consumers that are not very sophisticated, that may have just found out about crypto recently, or that are used to using an Android phone or an iOS or a Windows or a Mac computer, we're not educated, and we have no tools to actually keep these keys really secure. There's a lot of attack surfaces. There's a lot of potential for bad actors to come and try to take those keys. And just yesterday, I was reading about a fake app. I think it was a fake Trust Wallet app. By the way, Trust Wallet is a good wallet, but that fake one was published on Google App Store, and some users were installing the wrong app. It had the same logo. They didn't really check the matching of the spaces and the addresses, and they would just install it and put in a seed recovery sentence, and the seed recovery sentence was instead going to the bad actor, who would regenerate the keys and swoop all the assets. So all these things happen, and there's so many attack vectors. The point is that these seed sentences, these 12 word, 20 word, whatever passphrases that are used today to ensure that users can store and regenerate their keys as necessary, are a bit of a double-edged sword. Yes, they enable self-sovereignty, and they enable people to hold their keys rather quickly and easily, but at the same time maintaining and keeping these words safe, knowing where to put them and where not to put them, knowing who to trust and who not to trust to reveal those keys, is really difficult. And unfortunately, in the big scheme of things, there are always going to be a percentage of people that will not be able to do it. So we're just exposing all those people unnecessarily to the trouble and the problem of fraud.
Right.
So what we really wanted to do with our chips is to do a self-contained key management solution. So all of this key generation, the seed. Well, at this point, the seed becomes an old concept, because the entropy to generate the keys is self-contained within the chip. So you no longer need a seed sentence to then generate a key. The key is just plain out generated within the confines of the secure element and within the silicon circuits. You produce the key. Once you have this private key and public key, obviously, it never leaves the chip. It cannot, by definition. It's by design. And it took us quite a while to develop this firmware that acts in the interest of the user to hide the key even from the user. So my favorite quote ever since I joined Tangem is, if you want to keep a secret, you must also hide it from yourself. It's from George Orwell, 1984.
Sure.
it goes on with a lot more, and actually it's a very complex sentence, and it's also very debatable ethics thereafter. But the first part is very important, and it's true. It's fundamentally true that the only way for you not to leak out something is for you not to know it. And so we designed these chips to keep the private key, but not the users, not Tangem, not anyone can take it out and export it and read it and copy it. And so there's no attack vectors, there's no attack surface. We just remove the attack surface altogether. And in this way, physically keeping a card in your hands,
Mm-hmm.
the only way to possess the key that is inside, and no one else can take it in any other way than by other than physically retrieving the card. So it is quite simple for anyone, as you said, simpleton, to understand whether you have or you don't have the key. Is it in front of you in your hands? You have it. Is it not there? You don't have it. Problem solved. Has it been taken? No, still here. There's no such thing as putting your password in the wrong place, or your seed phrase in the wrong fake wallet.
Interesting. Okay, so here's I understood your explanation. Here's a big, I'm having this disconnect now, and that is there's value. The key, sorry, represents ownership. It's ownership of what? It's ownership of value in the form of whatever it is, the Cardano card, the BTC card, etc. How am I now interfacing if I want to exchange that value? I have to physically give the card to somebody?
Exactly, and this is where we marry the open source world. So chip and firmware are proprietary. Okay. The chip is an interchangeable platform. So we have we're now using Samsung secure core elements, which are top of the line, EAL6+, common criteria. But I can throw you a list of things, but they're very secure. We can use also other more proprietary solutions in the future, but that's beyond scope. The firmware is audited by Kudelski Security. Not sure if you know Blake too. It's a crypto primitive, very advanced crypto stuff, and the author of this very advanced crypto algorithms himself audited our firmware. So the firmware is audited and does what it says it does, which means don't reveal the private key outside, basically, no vectors. And then comes the open source layer. The open source layer is very interesting because it allows for any party, anyone, to build an application to interoperate, to interact with the Tangem cards, and request information out of them. Request a signature to operate a transaction, request to generate a new key pair, to purge and delete the old key pair, and so all and PIN codes. You can also do some security features on top of the card itself. So if you lose it or misplace it, no one's gonna use it. And so it's the signature that ultimately makes it all work. When you operate on blockchain assets, as you said earlier, so I'm coming there. When you want to transact with your blockchain assets, be it an identity, a credential, a currency, or anything else, what you're really sending to a node to encapsulate in a block as a transaction is a signature that proves that you have the private key, right, but does not contain the private key, obviously, because if you send the private key, the secret is gone. So you keep your secret secret. You sign a transaction with your secret, proving that only you could have done it because you have the private key. This signature is the most precious thing ever, because intercepting a signature will not allow any bad actor to do anything else that broadcasts the same transaction itself. So they won't have any added value. Okay, there's some cases for double spending, but that's sophisticated stuff. Let's say if you want to send one Bitcoin to me and you put the signature somewhere, anyone can intercept that signature. The only thing they can do is send that Bitcoin to me, from you to me.
Right.
So even if intercepted, there's no downsides, right? So this signature is produced by the chip on demand. How do we extract a signature from a chip? So there's an open source interface. You can go on github.com/Tangem. There's SDKs for Android, for iOS, for Cordova Java frameworks, we're going to put some desktop stuff as well. And so any developer can just rather quickly build an application that compiles the transaction from to how much, request signature, then the phone or any NFC, it could even be this type of NFC dongles connected to a desktop. It's an open standard. NFC has been around for a while, so it's not a niche thing. You tap the card on the phone will ask the chip, please, can I have a signature for this transaction with this blah, 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 with this hash, basically. And the chip will provide the signature and done. And then the interface, then the phone or the NFC terminal connected to some other interface will broadcast this transaction to a blockchain node. No node will approve it, and then you have the typical process, sometimes of miners on a stake, whatever, and they'll broadcast it to the network. When you have all the confirmation, the transaction is considered approved. And
I love it. I want to take a second, and I want to do a quick. A picture's worth 1,000 words kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this diagram you have on your web page that shows the blockchain, the connection, the application, the firmware, and the microchip.
Yeah,
was one of the most intriguing visuals for me, in that beyond the card, that chip is the value. And so what I'm looking down the road, and I'm thinking automobiles that have that chip, the entire transaction for the automobile can literally be done between the seller and the buyer without even walking into the office and filling out a form.
I'll double down one step forward. The automobile itself could have a chip and pay itself for parking and fuel just by approaching a fuel station or parking lot, because the car itself has a private key that proves ownership of a digital asset to spend for that purpose. There's so much you can do with it. And yes, the fact that it's a physical thing means that you have physical deliverability. And that's a beautiful thing. If I have a Tangem card loaded with 1 BTC and we want to do an OTC, an over-the-counter transaction, we meet in person, you want to give me pork belly or some other commodity, and I want to give you a BTC in exchange, we could literally trade off physically, and you could give me the pork belly and I give you the BTC card. All you need to do is literally tap it on your phone. I have a BTC card here. To tap it on your phone, and within a split of a second, whichever app, now I'm using the Tangem app, but it could be any app that supports Tangem cards, will quickly go online. We'll quickly ask the chip for a proof of keys. At that point, the phone will be certain that this card has the private keys to the specific blockchain assets, and then it's very easy to go on a blockchain and check what's available at the blockchain asset. This is empty. I also have cards with some balance. I could show you this one, for example. This one is XRP. I have my 28.46 XRPs. This is a card I use for the PayID demo, and so by physically receiving this card, you are receiving 82 XRPs, and it behaves like cash. At this point, is really it's a bit of a delicate term to use, but it is a bearer title, because this is a bearer title. Only the bearer has a title of ownership to this blockchain asset, and so I give it to you. Now you are bearing the title of ownership, and this is a beautiful, because we are merging the best of cash, which is privacy, instancy, physical deliverability, with the best of the digital world, with the best of 2020, blockchains, blockchain assets, all sort of derivation and tokens and other type of very precious innovations that have been produced by mankind and the crypto community in the past 20 years. So we have the best of both. And so there's so many applications. And as you said, yes, I can go buy a car with this by literally dropping the card on the table. The receiving end taps it, says, good, thanks for the Bitcoin, go get your car. Or you can go even more sophisticated. We're talking to central banks now. And with the central bank digital currency initiatives that are being scrutinized and talked about, anything from the digital dollar project down to other central banks publicly announcing that they have ongoing proof of concept for implementing central bank digital currency. What's really happening is that they want to somewhat disintermediate the tier 2 banks, the commercial banks, from handing out cash to citizens. And the only way a citizen can handle M0, so central bank issued cash today, digitally, is with a smartphone and an app that runs with connectivity, with a charging battery, with education about how to use it. You must have sourced for somewhere. So there's like 6 or 7 steps you really have to go through, and where you can mess up. See,
Right.
again, attack surfaces, bad actors, blah, blah, blah. Central banks can load their digital cash on a Tangem card, and there you go. And then anyone can just physically hold it. Can be fixed denomination, can be open wallet like this one, and at that point you can really have the use case where you show up at the car dealer and put your central bank issued cash note, digital note on the table and transact physically with that. Absolutely. And on the beautiful diagram that he showed earlier, what's really evident is the white line that goes from the chip all the way to the blockchain asset. that is the magic part, because any layer in between is not able to compromise a transaction. Is an intermediary, but it is a functional intermediary to transport the messages back and forth, but is not able to compromise the security of the transaction, which means that we're disintermediating everything in between the chip and the asset issuer. And in the case of a permissionless, let's say, ownership-less chain like Bitcoin, that means that you only really need to trust this chip. As long as you understand that the chip is good and solid, doesn't have vectors, then there's no one else to trust. It's completely trustless, made physical. Whereas in the case of a central bank or gold tokenizers like these clients of ours that distribute gold tokens on cards, in those cases, then you just need to trust the issuer that has really tokenized the assets, not like the Wuhan gold this week. And did you hear about the $2 billion of gold being fake ingots in China? It was okay. So if you do trust the issuer and the tokenizer of the asset, and you do trust the chip, anything between is redundant. Doesn't need to be tokenized. It doesn't need to be trusted. Sorry, and that's important because it removes attack surface. It removes agency complications and bureaucracy and friction. It improves accessibility to people that don't have access to all these intermediaries, removes cost. So it can just be for the better. It's basically, so we're trying, just to recap, we're trying to take the best of blockchains and trustlessness and the best of real life, physical, easy user experience components and make it in one product without compromising security. There's a lot of other hardware wallet solutions. I'm not going to go and specifically point at some competition, but the user experience is important. If it takes half an hour to set up a wallet and load coins and stuff, you already are catering to a very small total of the addressable market, and you're actually even discouraging new people to using cryptocurrencies. And even worse, if the whole solution is based on writing 12 words on a piece of paper, we perfectly know that 80% of people would not do that safely. And if they don't do it safely, they're going to get scammed. If they get scammed, again, they lose trust in the whole system, and you're really not helping anyone. And we know about this. So at this point, there are no excuses about whether that's a good or a bad solution.
Well, this is like a perfect segue to where what Tangem is doing and your involvement in the PayID coalition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd like to ask one question real quick so that I'm totally clear on what we have discussed. For instance, on my phone, I have an app from an incredible developer named Weetsay Win His organization is the XRPL Labs, and they
Mm-hmm.
created literally a banking app called Sum.
Mm-hmm.
And it is incredible two parts. For instance, I have access to my store of value, which is my total addressable value on whatever blockchain,
Mm-hmm.
but also a like carry wallet. So I can load into the app on the actual phone X amount of asset that I want to leave the house and have, like spending money in my wallet
Mm-hmm.
without, when I'm out there, having any of those attack vectors that have access to my bank, my actual vault, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. So I'm curious, when I'm thinking about the Tangent chip, is that something that let's say I have a BTC card with 10 BTC on it, but I
Mm-hmm.
only want to have a working, I only want 0.02 BTC available to QR code for a soda or a Starbucks coffee or something. Is it that flexible, or is it zero sum? It's all or nothing with the card.
Let's go back 1 second. Sorry for
Okay.
my voice.
Right.
Let's go back 1 second. At the very basic, that chip on the diagram has a very important role that is limited to creating keys, signing transactions, storing the key, and removing the keys at the end of the life cycle. That's what it does. Anything else you build on top, it's an application layer, and it's open source based on our open source SDKs. So any developers can build any type of application. We have a Tangem wallet that is a reference design that helps people understand how to interact with the cards. But we already have a handful of wallets and other applications who are starting to use the chip for different purposes. As you said, money is not all like cash case that you have your storage, you have your bank, you have the insurance, you have your pocket money, you have so there's different ways money is used and stored. And so should a Tangem card help people handling their money in different ways. For example, if you keep $20,000 or $30,000 in a single blockchain wallet, like I did last week, and I posted a video about it, and maybe we can link it to the interview later.
Okay.
If you do that, do you want it all to be on one card, on one Tangem card? You could, but it's the equivalent of having a single cashier check in your pocket and walking around with it. Do you really want to do it? Well, I mean, yeah, maybe for a very short time, but then you go straight to put it in a safe place, right? So what do you really want to do is to have redundancy in the case and protect yourself from any type of potential problems. For example, if you lose a card, if you break a car because you sit on it, or your cat or your dog eats it, if you have shared assets between your partners, business partners, or life partners, and each of you has a card that can access. So what you want to do is to have a beautiful feature that is available in most blockchains, which is multi-signature wallets. Threshold signatures is various way to name it. But point is, a wallet doesn't necessarily have to have only one single signer, one single owner. It can be shared with amongst different owners, each with their own private key. So a card has a private key. If you set up a wallet where multiple private keys in threshold, so M of N, sum of all of them, can sign a transaction to move, withdraw, or change something, then you solve that problem. And specifically to the pocket money, I would absolutely have a wallet with pocket money and a wallet with holdings, or multiple wallets with holdings. And then again, I have nothing against custodial services. Banks are there for a reason, and they help people. They provide services like savings and added value solutions and borrowing. But there should always be a right mix, and people should be free to easily pick what type of mix they want to implement in their treasury strategy. They want to have 80% in the bank, 19% in a self-custody solution that is completely under their control, 1% in their pocket. Is that what they want? Once they decide that, then the 19% that goes in self-custody, I would strongly recommend to do a multi-signature with Tangem. So there is a product that was launched by a partner of ours. It's called Vault. It's a Stellar-based wallet, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more multi-sig solution coming up with Tangem in the next few months. What you do is just tap on the app, select how many signers you want for a specific wallet, provision the signers with different Tangem cards, and each card is a key. At that point, you'll have your 2 or 3 or 3 of 3 or 4 or 5, whatever you want, set up, and that will allow you to distribute these cards, put them in safe places, maybe put one in a safe, give one to your notary, give one to your partner, and then you can really keep this holding really safe. There are solutions in the market for multi-sig, but they require a little bit of they sell the whole solution. So it's either a subscription or a fee service, and they'll help you setting up with a lot of hardware wallets left and right, and you could do everything by yourself. You can just have a smartphone, tap, provision the cards, distribute them to the people that are relevant, and or put them in safe places. And so the beauty is you can build the solution that is rightly catered to the exact need that you have. And that's what Tangem card. Look, and moving on with this, at the very high-end extreme, this card is Tangem card is made by a Hyperledger project company called Soromitsu, and it's used by the National Bank of Cambodia to sign real-time gross settlement transactions. So $100 million transactions, gross settlement between commercial bank and central bank, tap with the Tangem card, multi-signature. So it scales from 1 XRP to hundreds of millions of dollars. Doesn't matter. The point is that you only need to trust the chip and trust the ledger or the issuer on the ledger. Done. It's all trustless in between.
Wow. So
very scalable.
That's incredible. Because I keep drawing back to, okay, how would I utilize this, and how would I help another person get into the crypto space with this incredible technology? And I keep coming back. This is the picture in my brain. That is, so basically, I would have, let's say I decide that the currency that I'm going to use for the most part is going to be XRP. Okay, great. Perfect. So I have an XRP card that I keep in my wallet. That's my bank. Yeah. Then I have an XRP card. I'm sorry. The first XRP card's my bank. I keep that in my fireproof safe.
Correct.
Then I have a card in my wallet. That card in my wallet is my walking around money. And I interface the whole enchilada with this cell phone that I'm already very accustomed to using. Yeah. I'm already acclimated to many features within dApps. Within applications, etc.
That's an iPhone, yeah. I'm just showing the same thing, but on iPhone.
Well, yours is a lot cooler because you actually have the stuff on it. So now, okay. See again, all these user interfaces that bring the trust and security and real value proposition of crypto to the normal layman who doesn't want to have this exponential learning curve to utilize the technology. Tangem is a step or a brick in that wall of having.
Absolutely.
That to me is phenomenal. I can't wait to get a couple of cards.
I'll send you a few right away.
Oh, really?
Of course.
Oh my goodness. Well,
because it makes you happy. It makes you happy, makes me happy.
Gracias, because I'll tell you, that to me, I have a lot of friends that I've grown up with. They're in my age demographic. We're in our mid-50s. And none of my friends, and I have a very large group of friends that we still stay in contact with, they think I'm a knucklehead. They go, Jerry, I don't want to spend 3 months learning how to do all this. Everything I do already, it works fine. I use my debit
Got it.
card when I need to do something. If I have a huge transaction, my bank will wire transfer it to where I want it to go. And they've just like surrendered to that way. And that's totally cool. I get it. It takes a certain kind of like hustler, go-getter to be interested in this innovation. However, Ray Charles can see that this innovation is sweeping through all these industries. And pretty soon, all my friends that think I'm nuts now will be doing all this stuff without even knowing it, because it'll all be going through these phones and these systems like you put in place with these hard chips. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, you said it right. It's there's a lot of complacency with users resting comfortably on the laurels of a traditional system, a legacy system. And there's nothing really wrong with that. Of course, the system has grown into being a little bit rusty and sometimes susceptible to abuse, sometimes just not very convenient to the end user, not playing in interest of the end user. We could talk forever about how the banks and whatever. There's good and bad about it. The point is that I see the next 5-10 years of crypto as convergence towards being more user friendly, and we definitely play a pivotal role there, and so does PID, of course, which is an extra component that really streamlines various steps the users have to go through in order to transact with crypto. So convergence towards user friendliness. There's convergence between identity and the payments. That is also very important, because if you think about it, what is your debit card or credit card? Same thing, by the way. They just bank markets it differently, but the same thing. What is it? It's an authentication device. It says, oh yeah, I already have this card and it's really me, and I have the PIN. So it's an authentication device, really. The payment is done in the background by the bank to bank, issuing bank to acquiring bank. That they're really and what is the difference between identifying with your driving license or passport at Custom Border Patrol checkpoint? Nothing. There's no difference. You're just using two different devices. You're identifying yourself and then authorizing some sort of transaction. In one case, they authorize you entering a country. In the other case, you authorize a liquor shop owner authorizes you to buy a drink. In the third case, you authorize a movement of money from one account to the other. But it all boils down to, yeah, it's really me, and this is authorized. I have the credentials, so there's some credentials exchange. So your credit card is nothing more than a credential to withdraw from an account to a third-party account. So so there's this convergence payments and identity. There's convergence of crypto to user friendliness, and there's of course a convergence of traditional finance rail with crypto rails, and that's very important. And we're trying to see a lot of crypto projects that try to brand themselves as complete independence from the traditional system, and it's beautiful, and I think there should be a portion of that is always available, because the availability of freedom is what really makes you free, but you don't necessarily have to opt for freedom. The fact that you can keep your money in your cash at home or in a bank is your freedom. That's what must be there. Now it's up to you to choose how much you want to put in a bank and how much you want to keep at home under your pillow. It's really up to you. And I would not advocate to keep everything under your pillow, because you're just concentrating risk. You're putting all the eggs in one basket, which is just wrong by definition. So I think that the future will be, next 5 years, we will see a lot of crypto fundamental products and values slowly being adopted by the traditional financial system. PID is a fantastic, great little first step. Tangem is actively working with anyone from central banks to major payment network operators and also smaller banks to establish closed loop payment system, open loop payment system, national currency, digital notes. We really want to make sure that we are the oil that lubricates this transition from old rusty legacy systems to fluid, quick, fast, efficient, costless new systems. And a lot of blockchains also like Ripple, like Ethereum, like Stellar, Cardano, they're all working into the direction to trying to not only be we do it all system, but be a plug, like a connector between other systems. It just creates shorter loops of value transmission and value attestation. So that's what I will see in the next years.
I think that's so cool. I'll tell you, my audience is well aware that although I'm an advocate for all these incredible projects, I'm really only an actual, I have skin in the game in 3. So I own XRP, I own ADA from Cardano, and I own BET from VeChain. And I have very specific reasons why. I believe payments are at the core of everything. That's XRP. I believe programmable smart contracts are going to revolutionize commerce in ways that we haven't even begun to think about yet. And I think Cardano is best in class for a lot of reasons. And then VET, because I think what they're doing with supply chain management authorization, the tokenomics of the program, I just think they're the best supply chain protocol out there today. Are all these things subject to change with iterations and innovations? Yes, but those are the bets I've made, and I'm happy with them, win or lose. I'm curious, Sergio, aside from Tangem, now this is just like for Sergio the man, have you been a crypto enthusiast for long? And if you would, what would Sergio's portfolio in crypto look like?
This is not financial advice.
We're just two guys talking.
Gotta say it. Yeah, of course, I've always been a tech geek. So I grew up in Italy, and then I moved to Asia for 15 years. So I have a bit of a global perspective, let's say, literally. And I also worked in Africa and other places. And ever since I was a kid, luckily, my dad was also a tech entrepreneur and was one of the pioneers of digital communications integrated systems. So I literally grew up in a house with all my electronics lab ready. Ever since I was 4 years old, I was playing with oscilloscopes and spectrum analyzers and HF radios, listening to stuff, putting antennas on the roof. So I got it. I got it in my blood running. And of course, starting to read and decrypt HF radio signals from vessels around the Mediterranean Sea at age 7 or 8 was already a first foray into cryptography. But then, of course, the internet came and it changed everything. Then it made everything, the learning curve, which is so much faster. At that point, you just go read blogs, read BBS, and then and try and copy scripts, and boom, all of a sudden you're really doing advanced stuff. And so I did a few startups in the internet space. I exited both. One was in Italy, one was out of Hong Kong, and they all had clearly a focus on information systems and data services. And we did run data centers. At some point, we were running one of the largest Italian voice over IP services. So yeah, I always had to keep my tabs on the latest and best in cryptography. And then by 2000, I think I was a bit late to Bitcoin. I was very busy. I was trying to get my company off the ground, and then I sold it. So when you're focused, you don't really have time for that. But by 2014, I finally sold my second company, and I had a little bit of space to do mental space. And of course, the first thing I did was to go back to Bitcoin, and that's when Bitcoin recollapsed back to a few $100. I think it was 200, and that's when I said, good, looks like a good moment to buy. And so I literally bought the dip at 200, and ever since I've always been keeping part, not all. I mean, a reasonable, well-defined proportion of my holdings in crypto, and it's mostly Bitcoin, but it's also other stuff. And I think you always have to be reasonable. It's all about treasury strategy. It's all about how much risk you want to accept. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Understand it deeply. If you don't understand it, maybe just stay out. You need to understand it. It's the same with stock, right? If you're just going for what's up for intraday up and down, it's as good as horse races. And if you like to gamble, fine, go to Vegas. Then it's more fun. At least you got free drinks, because no one's gonna give you a free drink if you waste your money on E-Trade or on a crypto stock. So Sergio as a person thinks that you need to understand very deeply what you invest in, and I have obviously deeply researched a lot of protocols and I personally know founders of such protocols, so I can have the whole spectrum of knowledge from who the founders is, who the management team is, what the product is really doing. Look at what's been published in terms of improvements on the protocol. Is it active? Are they really going somewhere? And the ecosystem plays a big role. And unfortunately, that's the most difficult thing to get kick-started. I think the most successful blockchain or protocol today, ecosystem-wise, is Ethereum. They did a really good job in gathering a lot of developers to build on it. And that's not a sign of success, but that's one of the important steps towards success and adoption, after all. So success is just adoption, right? When hundreds of millions of people will, on a daily basis, use a feature, a product, or a service powered by a specific protocol or chain, then that's where the protocol or chain is successful. And frankly, today none of them have. So we're still in the phase where we are looking at who's going where. And I don't think there's going to be one winner to take it all. It's going to be, as you said, some are better for payments, some are better for remittance channels, some are better for banking services. Hyperledger is doing an amazing job because they have all these very specialized permission chains that cater to specific verticals, identity, all the Ares Indie project, Iroha, which is the one with the National Bank of Cambodia, and there's a ton of others for industry applications. And they're really good. So it's very broad, and you need to understand really deeply who's behind and what the intentions are and what the plan is. So
let me ask you a question, because there are a few people that I hold in very, very high regard as it pertains to their knowledge of the specific protocol that they're working on, as well as a very vast knowledge of the way that protocol could interface with the world, because they understand these other elements of the world. These are men like David Schwartz from Ripple, Charles Hoskinson from Cardano.
Hey, Charles.
Yeah, Sonny from VeChain. These are guys. Hey,
Sonny.
Huh?
No, I'm saying hi to them.
Yeah. These are now. This conversation with you, I'm starting to get the sense that you could be at that table having any conversation about any of these elements with any of those men and hold your own. Now, I couldn't. I'd have to be a fly on the wall, just kind of trying to take it in. I wanted to ask you something because I believe that you would have an insightful answer to it. I am always looking from the perspective or the lens of a value investor. So I look at management teams. I look at contracts. I look at sales numbers. These are things that I use as metrics to help me form valuation. Do I go or I don't go? In the crypto space, you just mentioned that there's a tremendous amount of promise, but not a ton of actual adoption.
Yeah.
I am curious to your thoughts about Ripple, because from where I sit, they are leading the charge in actual real world integration of this promising technology in actual real, actually being used vertical. And so I'm curious, do you see it the same as I do, or am I carrying some bias that maybe I should be made aware of, that maybe they haven't made the progress that I think they have?
So is it called survivorship bias? No, I don't remember. The bias when you hold on to something, you think it's better than others, right?
Right.
So you said a lot of things. Let's go one by one. Looking at crypto projects today is like analyzing startups correctly. There's a lot of promise, there's a lot of potential. It's hard to look at hard metrics because technical analysis that really goes down to sales and contracts is not, it just doesn't apply. So I think what's important there is, again, to go back to what I said earlier, try to look at the path, the trend. Not the trend isn't with hype, but the path that these projects have been going through since the beginning. What did they say they would do on the first day when they did their ICO? And what do they say they do now? And what did they say in between? What did they literally publicly state? Their leadership. What do they say in public? What did they talk about? What are their ethical standards? Because that's going to define the future trend of those projects and companies. It's then of course the commercial opportunities will come and go, but their real substantial strategic decisions will always be anchored to their beliefs. And you can only tell someone's beliefs from how they mutated through the crypto world. And it's a very interesting space because, let me tell you something a bit subjective, but I have a strong opinion about this. The crypto world has been through a shock of the ICOs, and frankly, it was very bad. It was interesting. It created a lot of opportunity, created a lot of speed, it created a lot of innovation. In that sense, it was amazing. It did what venture capital did in a decade. It was done in a month. So in that sense, it's spectacular. But at the same time, it opened a little too many doors to bad actors. And again, we go back to the problem of attack surfaces. And uneducated users came by and thought it was the new gold rush. And there you go. SEC comes in and regulates it a little slowly, a little too late, but definitely does the right thing now in making sure that no one gets hurt. In this ICO boom, a lot of projects accumulated a lot of wealth for the sake of developing and continuing the project a little too quickly compared to normal standards. It's not necessarily bad, but it distorts the playing field substantially. So any metrics that you would use to assess feasibility and success of an idea or a project or an execution is completely not applicable. Think about it. I'm an entrepreneur. I do a startup. I get given $100,000 of funding. I don't hear anymore, by the way. I don't know if you're muted. And I go by and I try to get my project off the ground. As we all know, ideas are worth, what does it say, 2 cents a dollar? They're worth nothing, ideas. It's all about the execution. How do we know who's really good at executing? They have pretty much, there's a ton of projects out there that have infinite money, infinite money supply. They have hundreds of millions of dollars laying out after the ICOs. And they're still around. The fact that they're still around doesn't mean that they're good at executing. It means that doesn't imply that they're good at executing. It implies that they haven't hit the wall yet because they haven't run out of money. And again, also that doesn't imply they're not good projects, but you can't use the traditional standards for evaluating their feasibility. That's the point. And also there's a lot of hammers looking for nails now. So there's a lot of beautiful technologies that are really looking forward to a use case that makes them become the hundreds of millions of users point. And that's slow to happen. It's very difficult to just pick a winner. And frankly, I wouldn't try to pick a winner. I would just say that look for the projects that have demonstrated ethical standards. Look for the projects that are not wasting the money, but are really using it for smart things, that they really look for real life use cases and try to solve one problem at a time and solve it well. There's no problem in pivoting. If this doesn't work, move on to the next thing. So you may see projects have tried 100 things and they never work. Doesn't imply anything. All that matters is that they're trying to solve a real problem. And so yes, it's complicated.
Well, I think that those are sound words, and you are definitely a skillful tacticianer when it comes to how you phrase things. because you
No, I
very
know. You asked me about Ripple. I didn't talk about Ripple. I know people at Ripple, as I know people at Stellar and Ethereum and Cardano everywhere. And I think there's a lot of valuable people everywhere. So it's very hard for me to say Ripple is good versus the others, because it's not.
I don't come from a if this is good, that means this has to be bad. That isn't at all how I think. I can understand in your position. In other words, I was trying to congratulate you on giving me a very good answer on valuation without putting yourself in a position where you could be seen or perceived as being negative towards any one thing or too positive to any one thing.
Well, likewise, you have to congratulate you for posing the questions really well, and also, frankly, for helping me breaking this down in layman's terms. I never had this type of conversation where I really broke it down and explain it so that everyone could understand it. And thanks for helping me going through this.
Well, I'm grateful that you took the time to chat with me today. I look forward to the incredible growth of your company. I see, with the Internet of Things, with the innovation of AI, having chipsets that have functionality like yours that assign itself to real value and allow value exchange to happen almost seamlessly is it's revolutionary. We're coming out of this old analog financial world into this new, finely nuanced, layered digital world, and there's a place for a lot of people to do some great things, and I see Tangem as one of those companies that's on that path. So I look forward to watching your progress. I hope that you and I can get together in 6 months and a year and celebrate some incredible victories.
Let me know when you come up to the Bay Area.
I will. Well, I will be up there at some point in the next 2 years, I hope. And I want to wish you and your family well. And for those of you that have tuned in today, this has been just a deep learning experience for me. And I hope that you're taking away from it all the incredible things that I did. Until next time, Pura Vida.
Bye.